In the heart of Fort Collins, Colorado, we find ourselves immersed in a tale of love, betrayal, and tragedy that unfolded in the month of May 2019. The narrative revolves around the untimely demise of a revered educator and the fatal consequences of her spouse's possessive fixation. Dr. Vivian Severn, a resident of Fort Collins, Colorado, was a vibrant 42-year-old who shared her life with her husband, Robert Severn. As an English professor at a nearby college, she captivated students with her dynamic and captivating teaching methods. Vivian's passion for British literature of the interwar period was unparalleled, earning her recognition as a leading authority in the subject. Her dedication to her students was so profound that she frequently welcomed them into her home, offering overnight assistance with their academic pursuits. Robert Severn, the proprietor of the well-liked laundromat chain Clean Spin, was Vivian's husband. The laundromats were particularly popular among the local student population. Their union, however, had recently been under strain due to whispers of Vivian's unfaithfulness. Despite these challenges, their 15-year marriage was punctuated by many joyous moments. Robert, then 45, was recognized for his honorable conduct and meticulous nature. In his personal life, he tended to be introverted, preferring solitude outside of his professional commitments. Vivian found solace in the beauty of the neighboring Rocky Mountain National Park, often embarking on hikes. She was also a respected figure in the Fort Collins Book Club. Her social circle was vast, and her spirited personality and contagious laughter were well known. Vivian was in the process of authoring a 700-page book titled From Brightest Head to Lehman, Interwar Literature's Role in Historical Erotic Fiction, which amalgamated her love for teaching and research. In the days preceding her untimely death, Vivian was occupied with grading final exams, preparing for the upcoming summer semester, and putting the finishing touches on her book. She was also organizing a hiking excursion with her friends to mark the end of the academic year. Colleagues noted her enthusiasm and energy as she eagerly anticipated the break. She had recently shared a post on Facebook about a book she was reading and uploaded pictures from a hiking trip on Instagram. Vivian's students held her in high esteem, appreciating her commitment and fervor. She often extended invitations to her students to visit her office for additional support and encouraged open discussions about their thoughts and viewpoints. Her office was a reflection of her love for literature and all forms of adventure, adorned with books, papers, and photographs from her travels. Vivian's life was brimming with potential, yet beneath the surface, there were strains and hidden truths that would culminate in a heart-rending conclusion. Her tale serves as a poignant reminder of how even the most seemingly idyllic lives can be destroyed by envy and obsession. As the sun rose over Fort Collins on the morning of May 15, 2019, the college campus was bathed in a gentle glow. Hank Murphy, a janitor at the college, commenced his customary cleaning duties at approximately 7:30 a.m. Hank was a familiar and friendly face on campus, admired for his dedication to maintaining the cleanliness of the buildings. Upon entering the English department, he noticed that the office door of Dr. Vivian Severn was slightly open. This was unusual, as Vivian was known for her fastidiousness in securing her door. Driven by curiosity and concern, Hank knocked softly, but there was no answer. As he cautiously pushed the door open, he was confronted with a scene that would forever be etched in his memory. Vivian was found lifeless, slumped over her desk with 2 visible gunshot wounds, surrounded by a pool of blood. Papers and books were strewn across the desk, some bearing bloodstains. An eerie silence filled the room. Hank's heart pounded as he took in the horrifying sight. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping his cleaning supplies. After a moment of stunned disbelief, he managed to compose himself and hurried to the nearest phone to alert campus security. His hands shook as he dialed the number, and his voice quivered as he relayed the grim discovery. Upon receiving the distress call from campus security, a response team was promptly deployed to Dr. Severn's office, and the local police were notified without delay. As the mournful wail of sirens filled the air, the campus was enveloped in a sense of foreboding. Upon their arrival, the police discovered Hank seated on a nearby bench, his complexion ashen and his eyes wide with horror. The lead investigator approached the distraught janitor, taking note of his agitated state. With a still trembling voice, Hank recounted the harrowing discovery he had made, detailing the sight of Vivian's lifeless body sprawled across her desk, surrounded by a pool of blood. News of Dr. Severn's tragic demise spread like wildfire throughout the campus, leaving students and faculty alike reeling in disbelief. The community struggled to grasp the magnitude of the tragedy that had befallen their esteemed professor. Local news outlets soon picked up the story, briefly acknowledging her passing during their evening broadcasts. The discovery of Vivian's body marked the onset of an intricate investigation that would reveal hidden secrets and culminate in a startling conclusion. Following the urgent call from campus security on May 15, 2019, the police promptly arrived on the scene. Detective Sarah Len Bryant, renowned for her sharp instincts and composed demeanor, took charge of the investigation. With a wealth of experience in handling challenging cases, she was well equipped to lead the team. The sight that greeted them in Dr. Vivian Severn's office was nothing short of shocking. Bloodstains marred her desk, and papers were haphazardly strewn about the room, creating a chaotic amalgamation of a crime scene and a busy professor's workspace. The police's initial course of action was to secure the area, ensuring that no unauthorized individuals could enter or exit. Exercising extreme caution, they meticulously photographed the scene before attempting to touch anything. Detective Bryant and her team embarked on a search for clues, beginning with the bullet casings. They discovered 2 casings from a small-caliber handgun in close proximity to Vivian's desk. The shot's trajectory suggested that the assailant had been standing near Vivian when she was fatally wounded. The investigators also gathered potential evidence, including Vivian's computer, cell phone, and several personal items from her desk, hoping these belongings would provide insight into who may have wanted to harm her. Forensic specialists were summoned to analyze the bloodstains and other physical evidence present at the scene. They collected samples for further examination in the lab. The police also dusted for fingerprints, searching for any that did not belong to Vivian or Hank, the janitor who had discovered her body. As the investigation continued inside, other officers began canvassing the area outside the building, conducting interviews with students, faculty, and staff in an effort to reconstruct Vivian's final moments. A palpable sense of shock and confusion permeated the air, as many struggled to accept that such a respected professor could fall victim to such a heinous crime. Detective Bryant meticulously reviewed security camera footage from various locations on campus, hoping to identify any suspicious individuals entering or exiting the building around the time of the murder. While the footage revealed people coming and going, there was nothing immediately incriminating. The police were acutely aware of the challenging nature of the case that lay ahead. Although Vivian was well-liked, the rumors surrounding her personal life meant that there was no shortage of potential suspects. Detective Bryant and her team braced themselves to delve deeper into Vivian's life, her relationships, and her secrets, believing that a more comprehensive understanding of her circumstances would lead them to the individual responsible for her death. As twilight descended upon Fort Collins, the police concluded their preliminary investigation at the crime scene. They had amassed a considerable amount of information, yet many questions remained unanswered. The investigation was merely in its infancy, and Detective Bryant recognized the arduous journey that awaited them in their quest for justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. As the investigation gained momentum, Vivian Severn's husband, Robert Severn, emerged as the prime suspect. At the age of 45, Robert was a thriving entrepreneur who owned Clean Spin, a popular chain of laundromats among Fort Collins students. Despite his professional accomplishments, Robert was known to be somewhat introverted in his personal life. Friends and family had observed his growing jealousy and fixation on rumors of Vivian's infidelities, which placed him under immediate scrutiny. On the evening of May 16, 2019, Robert was brought in for questioning at the Fort Collins police station. Detective Sarah Len Bryant led the interrogation. Robert appeared calm, but there was a tense air about him. The detective started by asking Robert about his relationship with Vivian. He admitted that their marriage had been strained due to the rumors about her affairs with students. Robert provided an alibi, stating that he was at home the night of Vivian's murder, working on financial reports for Clean Spin. However, when asked if anyone could confirm his alibi, Robert struggled to provide a solid witness. This raised more suspicions among the detectives. During the interrogation, Robert's demeanor shifted. He became defensive when the detectives pressed him about his whereabouts and his feelings about Vivian's alleged affairs. He repeatedly denied having any involvement in her death, but his evasive answers only made the detectives more suspicious. The police also looked into Robert's financial records and phone logs. They found several calls and texts between Robert and Vivian in the days leading up to her death, many of which were heated arguments about the rumors. This added to the detectives' theory that Robert's jealousy and obsession could have driven him to commit the crime. Detective Bryant and her team continued to press Robert for more information, hoping to find inconsistencies in his story. They also searched the Severn home for any evidence that might link Robert to the crime. They found a handgun that matched the caliber of the bullets used in Vivian's murder. This was a significant piece of evidence, but it wasn't enough to make an arrest without further proof linking Robert to the actual shooting. While the police continued to investigate other leads, Robert remained a key suspect. His behavior, the strained marriage, and the discovery of the handgun all pointed towards him. However, the detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to make an arrest. The investigation was far from over, and the police were determined to find justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. On May 18, 2019, a clear and sunny day in Fort Collins, a significant piece of evidence surfaced. Around 10 a.m., campus security found a flash drive in the parking lot near the English department. It had fallen out of a backpack left behind by one of Dr. Vivian Severn's students. The flash drive was quickly handed over to the police for investigation. Detective Sarah Len Bryant and her team examined the contents of the flash drive. To their shock, they found dozens of videos of Dr. Vivian Severn engaging in sexual activities with students, both in her office and at her home. These videos confirmed the rumors about Vivian's infidelities and added a new layer to the case. It appeared that Vivian had been sexually involved with her entire class, far beyond professional boundaries. The police analyzed the videos for clues about the murder. They looked at timestamps, locations, and other details that might help identify who had access to the footage and who could have a motive for murder. The most recent video, recorded just hours before Vivian's death, showed her in a threesome with a pair of twins, Tanner and Lainey Taylor, who were two of Vivian's top students. The police also traced the origin of the videos. They discovered that the recordings had been made using hidden cameras in Vivian's office, as well as in the bedroom and bathroom of her house. The detectives expanded their investigation to include anyone who might have had access to Vivian's office and home. As the investigation continued, Detective Len Bryant's team analyzed the digital data from the flash drive. They looked for fingerprints, checked the metadata of the files, and searched for any connections to other suspects. This new evidence complicated the case, revealing that Vivian's relationships were even more tangled than initially thought. The videos provided a clearer motive for the murder: jealousy and revenge. With the flash drive's discovery, the police had a critical piece of the puzzle. It suggested that the killer was someone who knew about Vivian's secret life and was deeply affected by it. The investigation was becoming more complex, but they were determined to follow every lead. After discovering the videos on the flash drive, the police turned their attention to Tanner and Lainey Taylor. Tanner and Lainey were 19-year-old twins and two of Dr. Vivian Severn's top students. Known for their charm and good looks, they were often seen together around campus. Several videos on the flash drive showed them both having sex with Vivian, raising suspicions about their involvement in her death. On May 19, 2019, the police brought Tanner and Lainey in for questioning. Detective Sarah Len Bryant led the interrogation. Tanner and Lainey seemed nervous but cooperative. They admitted to having a sexual relationship with Vivian, often spending extra time in her office under the pretense of needing academic help because they had dyslexia. They also claimed that their sexual relationship with Vivian was necessary because, in Vivian's class, sexual performance made up 80% of the grade. The police asked the twins about their whereabouts on the night of Vivian's death. Tanner said he was studying at the library, while Lainey said she was at a friend's house. The police checked their alibis, but neither could be confirmed with certainty. This made the detectives more suspicious of the twins. The police also looked into the Taylors' backgrounds. They were well liked by their peers and had no history of violence or criminal activity. However, their close relationship with Vivian and the videos on the flash drive made them key suspects. Detective Len Bryant and her team searched the twins' dorm room for any evidence linking them to the murder. They found several items belonging to Vivian, including a book and a scarf, which raised further questions about their relationship. However, they did not find any direct evidence linking the twins to the murder weapon or the crime scene. The police also analyzed the digital data from the flash drive to see if Tanner or Lainey had accessed it. The results were inconclusive, as the flash drive had been used by multiple devices. This made it difficult to determine who had planted the hidden camera in Vivian's office. Throughout the investigation, Tanner and Lainey maintained their innocence. They expressed shock and sadness over Vivian's death and insisted they had nothing to do with it. Despite their denials, the police continued to consider them key suspects due to their close relationship with Vivian and their presence in the incriminating videos. As the investigation continued, Detective Len Bryant and her team knew they had to find more concrete evidence to either prove or disprove the twins' involvement in Vivian's murder. The case was becoming more complicated, and the police were determined to follow every lead to find justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. On May 20, 2019, the police turned their attention to Dr. Jonathan Brooks. Dr. Brooks was a 50-year-old professor specializing in ancient Phoenician history. Known for his strict demeanor and high academic standards, he had a reputation for being difficult to work with. Despite this, his dedication to his field was undeniable. There were rumors of a professional rivalry between Jonathan and Vivian, and some even suggested they had once been romantically involved. The police brought Dr. Brooks in for questioning. Detective Sarah Len Bryant led the interrogation. Dr. Brooks was calm and cooperative, although he seemed slightly irritated by the situation. He admitted to having a professional rivalry with Vivian, but denied any romantic involvement. He described the relationship as strictly academic and very competitive. When asked about his whereabouts on the night of Vivian's murder, Dr. Brooks said he was at home grading papers. He provided a list of students whose work he had graded, but this alibi was hard to verify. The police noted his irritation, but continued to press him for more information. Dr. Brooks revealed that he and Vivian had been engaged in a strange competition, seeing who could have sex with more students during the school year. He said it was all in good fun and claimed he wasn't serious about it, but the police found this revelation extremely disturbing and considered it a possible motive. If, as he said, Vivian had won the competition shortly before her death, it could have created tension between them. The police also searched Dr. Brooks's office and home for any evidence linking him to the murder. They found several personal items belonging to Vivian, including a pen and a notebook. However, these items were not enough to directly link him to the crime. They did not find any weapons or anything that would suggest he was involved in her death. As the investigation continued, the police looked into Dr. Brooks's digital activities. They examined his emails and social media for any signs of animosity towards Vivian. They found a few heated exchanges about academic matters, but nothing that pointed to a motive for murder. Throughout the interrogation, Dr. Brooks maintained his innocence. He expressed shock and sadness over Vivian's death and insisted he had nothing to do with it. Despite his cooperation, the police remained suspicious due to his rivalry with Vivian and the strange competition they had been engaged in. Detective Len Bryant and her team knew they had to find more concrete evidence to either prove or disprove Dr. Brooks's involvement in Vivian's murder. The case was becoming increasingly complex, and the police were determined to follow every lead to find justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. On May 22, 2019, the police received a breakthrough in the case. They discovered new evidence that pointed directly to Robert Severn, Vivian's husband. The evidence came from a detailed analysis of the flash drive found earlier. Hidden in the metadata of one of the videos was a timestamp showing that Robert had accessed the files an hour and a half before Vivian's murder. Detective Sarah Len Bryant and her team pieced together the timeline. Robert's obsession with Vivian's affairs had reached a boiling point. He found out about the sexual relationships with all of her students and felt humiliated and betrayed. The night of the murder, he traveled to Vivian's office to confront her. In a fit of rage, he shot her twice with the handgun he took from their home. The police had enough evidence to arrest Robert. On the morning of May 23, 2019, they arrived at his house. Robert was in the living room looking anxious. When the police told him he was under arrest for the murder of his wife, he did not resist. He seemed resigned, as if he had been expecting this moment. Robert's arrest shocked the community. Vivian's colleagues and students were stunned to learn that her husband was the killer. Many had suspected him, but the confirmation was still hard to accept. The Severn family was devastated. They had hoped that Robert was innocent and were now grappling with the reality of his actions. During the interrogation, Robert confessed to the crime. He explained how he had been driven into madness by Vivian's betrayals. He couldn't stand the thought of her having sex with all of her students, and in a moment of uncontrollable anger, he killed her. Robert's confession was detailed and left no doubt about his guilt. Vivian's family had mixed reactions to Robert's arrest. They were relieved that the killer had been caught, but the pain of losing Vivian was still fresh. They struggled with the idea that someone so close to her could have committed such a horrific act. The community of Fort Collins also reacted with a mix of relief and sadness. Many people gathered to support Vivian's family during this difficult time. The police wrapped up the investigation, having found the murderer. They had followed every lead and piece of evidence to bring justice for Dr. Vivian Severn. The case was closed, but the impact of the tragedy would linger in the hearts of those who knew her. As Robert awaited trial, the town of Fort Collins began to heal. The community came together to remember Vivian's contributions and the positive impact she had on her students and colleagues. Her legacy would live on even as they dealt with the painful truth about her death. In January 2022, delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the trial of Robert Severn finally began at the Larimer County Courthouse in Fort Collins, Colorado. The courtroom was packed with media, family members, and curious locals. The prosecution was led by District Attorney and Bay Area transplant Tabitha Quasimodo, known for her meticulous approach and determination to seek justice. Quasimodo presented a strong case against Robert, detailing his motive, opportunity, and the digital evidence that linked him to Vivian's murder. Quasimodo argued that Robert's jealousy and obsession with Vivian's infidelities drove him to commit the crime. He called several witnesses to the stand, including detectives who worked on the case, and experts who explained the metadata from the flash drive. The prosecution painted a clear picture of a man pushed to his breaking point by his wife's actions. The defense was handled by Robert's attorney, Lisa Martin, a 38-year-old with a reputation for being a tough and clever lawyer. Martin argued that Robert had been under immense emotional stress and had not acted with premeditation. She tried to cast doubt on the reliability of the digital evidence and suggested that someone else could have planted it to frame Robert. Throughout the trial, Vivian's family watched with heavy hearts. They were torn between their love for Robert and their need for justice for Vivian. The emotional toll was evident as they listened to the graphic details of the case and the arguments from both sides. The trial lasted for 3 weeks, with intense media coverage and daily updates in local newspapers and on news channels like NBC and CNN. On February 4, 2022, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the foreperson announced that Robert Severn was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a mix of relief and sorrow to Vivian's family. They were glad that justice had been served, but devastated by the loss of both Vivian and Robert. The community of Fort Collins reacted with a sense of closure. Many felt that the trial had revealed the deep complexities and dark secrets behind Vivian's seemingly perfect life. The case had sparked conversations about relationships, mental health, and the pressures faced by individuals in both personal and professional spheres. In the weeks following the verdict, Vivian's friends and colleagues held a memorial service to honor her memory. They focused on her contributions to the academic community and her positive impact on her students. The service was a reminder of the bright, dedicated person she was, despite the tragic circumstances of her death. As Robert began his life sentence, the Severn family struggled to move forward. The trial had taken a toll on everyone involved, but they hoped to find some peace in knowing that justice had been served for Vivian. After Robert Severn was sentenced to life in prison in February 2022, life slowly began to return to normal in Fort Collins. The community, shaken by the tragic events, started to heal. Dr. Vivian Severn's family faced the difficult task of moving on without her. They continued to honor her memory by setting up a scholarship fund for students studying literature, ensuring her legacy lived on. Vivian's colleagues at the university found it hard to return to their daily routines. Many of them attended counseling sessions to cope with the loss and the shocking revelations of the case. The English department, where Vivian had taught, dedicated a reading room in her name and worked together to finish and publish her book, From Brightest Head to Lan: Interwar Literature's Role in Historical Erotic Fiction. Robert Severn began serving his life sentence in the Colorado State Penitentiary. He spent his days in solitary confinement, reflecting on his actions. The media coverage of the trial and his imprisonment continued to follow him, but over time, public interest waned. His friends and remaining family members visited him occasionally, but the visits became less frequent as the months passed. Tanner and Lainey Taylor, the students involved in the scandal, struggled with the aftermath of the trial. They faced backlash from their peers in the community despite their involvement being revealed. They tried to continue their studies and both received counseling to help them deal with the trauma and the intense scrutiny they faced. Over time, they managed to rebuild their lives, but the events left a lasting impact on them. Dr. Jonathan Brooks, who had been a suspect in the investigation, returned to his teaching position. Although cleared of any wrongdoing in Vivian's murder, his reputation had taken a hit. He focused on his work, distancing himself from the scandal as much as possible. His colleagues were supportive, but the shadow of the events lingered. Detective Sarah Len Bryant and her team were commended for their work in solving the case. They continued to serve the Fort Collins community, using the experience to handle future cases with even greater care and precision. The department implemented new training programs to better handle sensitive cases involving personal relationships and digital evidence. The Fort Collins community, though scarred by the events, grew closer. People became more aware of the pressures and mental health issues faced by those around them. Local organizations and schools started offering more support services, aiming to prevent such tragedies in the future. The tragic death of Dr. Vivian Severn revealed a complex web of secrets and lies, ultimately driven by jealousy and obsession.